everyone, welcome to my channel where you get a little venom for your soul. I am your host with the most, Vetty, and as you can see, I have a backdrop. I'm kind of doing some remodeling right now in regards to that, so hopefully I can go back to the original, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it just yet, so I put this up, so my bad on that. So as you guys know, I do true crime on this channel. I also like to do paranormal stuff and things of that sort, just things that people normally don't talk about. I like to implement on that, so I'm going to be kind of switch it up, you know, in between episodes and stuff. Do one true crime, then do maybe something paranormal, things like that. Let me know what you guys think about that. But today we're going to be doing a movie that's based on an actual true story. And today's movie we're going to be talking about The Changeling, starring Angelina Jolie and John Malkovich. If you haven't watched the movie Changeling, just so you know, there will be spoiler alert here, so just an FYI. Just before we get started, I just want to give a trigger warning to everyone. This does include sexual content with minors. This also includes abuse, physically and mental and sexual, with minors and whatnot. So just a little trigger warning. If this is not your cup of tea, then I suggest you just go ahead and watch something else. The movie basically takes place in the 1920s in Los Angeles, and Angelina Jolie plays Kristen Collins, who is a single mother, and her son is Walter Collins. He ends up going missing, and she is looking for him, and they supposedly find him in Illinois. They bring him back, and it turns out that it's not really her son. So she fights to try to get her son back and to tell the LAPD that, hey, this is not my kid, like, y'all fucked up. And they're just not taking any responsibility. They go as far as arresting her and putting her in a psych unit. And at the end, it turns out that it really wasn't her son. And of course, instead of them taking responsibility, they blame it on the boy. And the boy ends up saying, well, y'all told me to do this. So however, towards the end, she never does find her son, unfortunately, so we don't know really what happens. And that's pretty much where the movie ends. It's a really good movie. I highly recommend it if you have not watched it. So in order to start the true story behind the movie Changeling, we're going to start with a boy named Gordon Northcott. Gordon was born in Canada in November 9th, 1906. His parents were Cyrus and Sarah Northcott, and he had a sister named Louise. He also had an older brother who unfortunately passed away at the age of 7, named William. After William's passing, the mom went into a deep depression, and this was actually before Gordon was born, and she just did not want to have any more children. It was said that after she found out she was pregnant with Gordon, she tried to do everything in her power to get rid of the pregnancy. His older sister was actually 18 years old when Gordon was born, so they definitely had that huge age gap. After Gordon was born, his parents kind of still didn't want anything to do with him, but eventually throughout the years, his mom actually started like just loving him more, and just she basically started spoiling him a lot more and just created the spoiled brat pretty much. As he grew, he was very flamboyant, he was just very charismatic, and he just knew what he wanted. He really liked to be out there. He loved the attention, you know, he craved it, and everywhere he went, he definitely made his presence known. He even got to the point where when he was old enough to drive, he drove this very fancy car, and then he would go out and, you know, just pick up these young boys and give them rides and whatnot. At this time, there was no reports of any foul play with any of these boys or whatnot. So in 1924, Gordon and his parents moved to Los Angeles, California, in hopes to find better job opportunities there. He made friends there, and he would he loved the social life, especially in, you know, LA, the Hollywood scene, all that stuff. He really enjoyed that. During this time, Gordon had made friends with this boy named Claude, who he became very friendly with, and he knew the family, like they just all loved him. And Clyde had a little brother named Philip. Gordon did have certain thoughts about Philip, and then after a while he actually started acting upon those thoughts, those emotions. And Philip didn't really understand what was going on, so we don't really know how long this was going on for. But once he got older, he did understand it, and he did tell his parents. Obviously, the parents were very upset about this. They called the police. Gordon was arrested for statutory rape, but for some unknown reason, he was released, and, you know, he was charged for it, but he was released. I don't know why. Gordon was known to be a pathological liar. He would definitely try to look better and just, he was just a known liar and a very good manipulator, especially when it came to his mom, because according to her, in her eyes, Gordon could do no wrong. So after a while, Gordon felt like he just wanted to do something with himself. Like it was a little tough for him to get a job because of what had happened with Philip. So he had convinced his parents to basically get him a loan or give him a loan, and he was able to purchase property in Wineville, California, which is now known as Miraloma, and it's about 48 miles away from Los Angeles, and it was just pretty much nothing but desert at that time. So he convinced his parents to do that, and he wanted to basically raise chickens and sell eggs and things like that. So Gordon also convinced his sister, who is 18 years his senior, to allow his nephew to come for the summer so he can kind of help him build the farm in Wineville, California. It was Gordon, his father, and his nephew Sanford, and they pretty much built the home, built the chicken coops. They did all that, got the land ready for basically the chickens and everything else. Sanford did say that he did have a lot of fun with his uncles, but he wanted to go home, basically. So once it was time for Sanford to go home, Gordon managed to convince his sister to allow Sanford to come back to America with him so he could pretty much help him with the farm and everything else there. At the time, Sanford had no idea how his uncle was. Obviously, no one really knew about his secrets, if you will, except for his parents for obvious reasons, but Sanford had no idea. And Sanford didn't want to go. So when he went to go pick him up from Canada, he was actually pretty much from the start just abusive. It started off playfully, but he would hit him and it would obviously hurt him. Now, Sanford did write a book called A Road Out of Hell, which pretty much describes in detail all the stuff that had happened, which I will not go over, but I will link it down below if you are interested in listening to it. It is available in Audible, so go ahead and check that out. Just FYI though, it is very gruesome and it's very detailed. There was a time where I even had to shut it off because I just couldn't take it, so just a little FYI. So when Sanford came to the farm, the abuse started getting worse. He was actually very shocked to find out that his uncle Gordon was abusive. So keep in mind, Gordon was in his early 20s at this time, and I want to say Sanford was probably maybe preteens, 13 years old. I'm not really 100% sure, but he was fairly young. Sanford realized that if he just kind of keeps his mouth shut, it wouldn't be as bad, but it would still be bad. And unfortunately, it went from physical abuse to sexual abuse. It got to the point where Gordon was actually using foreign objects on him, and it was just so bad. And in the book, it goes into details of all that stuff, and it's just so heartbreaking to know that he went through that, especially at such a young age. It was just, and at the hands of his uncle as well. So after Gordon was finished, he would whisper into Sanford's ear and say, and I quote, "Well, better the devil you know." Basically, that means stick to the devil that you know, implying that, it could be worse elsewhere. And the abuse and the manipulation got so bad that he convinced Sanford that he is not going anywhere. Basically, I will find you, I will do these things to you, things of that sort. It was just so bad. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, why didn't he reach out to his family, to his grandparents, to his mother in Canada or in Los Angeles? Well, it was a lot easier said than done. Obviously, when you're in that position, you can't just easily say, well, I would have just written something. Obviously, you're not in that position, so you wouldn't know. Gordon had Sanford so manipulated, so convinced, so traumatized that he would make him write letters to his family, basically saying how happy he is and how this is the best decision of his life and things of that sort. And then when they would go out to visit Gordon's parents, he would pretty much tell him you better act the part or else I will hurt you, type thing. And even so, it is said that the parents didn't really give two shits about Sanford or anything. The mom was all about Gordon, that's her baby, and didn't give two shits about Sanford, unfortunately. And the grandfather just didn't give a damn. It even got to the point where Gordon started having Sanford beat him as a type of I don't know, fantasy type thing. But if Sanford actually hurt Gordon, he would just beat the shit out of him pretty much. And then it got to the point where he would tell Sanford, like, if you call the police or if you try to escape, I will call immigration and report you, and you would go to jail, and they'll do worse things there to you. Which obviously, as a 13-year-old boy, he didn't know any better. So he just went with what his uncle told him, because that's the adult, and unfortunately, that's all he knew. So Sanford was actually forced to do all of the farming, all of the housework, all of the cooking, everything. He was forced to sleep on the floor, and he still had to attend the chickens and everything. And then after all that, Gordon would practically starve him. You know, he was so malnourished that he would not grow. In the book, it describes how he was just small, basically, because he was not eating, he was losing his hair, he was so stressed out. Eventually, Gordon allowed Sanford to start sleeping on the couch. He was like, well, you know, you earned it, so that was nice of him, I guess. Also, Gordon never enrolled Sanford into school, which was part of the deal of him moving to America with his uncle, but he never actually did that. Also, at this time, Gordon would start picking up homeless boys and unfortunately soliciting them for sexual acts. So when Gordon would abuse Sanford or these homeless boys, he never did it in the house. He would always do it in the chicken coops. Now, he had a few of them. I'm not really sure how many, but he did have chickens in some, but mainly they were there so he can go ahead and abuse these boys, including Sanford. Once when Sanford was in the chicken coop after being abused and whatnot, he said he woke up and he noticed that the chicken coop was actually open, which hardly ever happened. So he decided to try to escape, but he was in so much pain from the events prior to that he knew that he wasn't going to make it, because mind you, Wineville at the time was nothing but desert, and the closest neighbor he had was probably miles away. So he knew that at his state he could not escape. So he ended up going back to the chicken coop. Somehow Gordon found out about this and he went to the chicken coop. Sanford fell back asleep and he poured hot water on him and just woke him and just beat him for trying to escape. Sanford never knew how Gordon found out, unfortunately. And it would get to the point where Gordon actually forced Sanford to dig this giant hole, and he would put him in there and they would put planks on top. And that was kind of like his prison, and he would stay there for days on end. And this was Sanford's reality for the next 2 years. So in 1927, Gordon started kind of setting his sights on other boys, if you will. So the abuse towards Sanford wasn't as bad anymore, or at least it wasn't as often, but it still happened. In 1927, he actually tried to kidnap a boy from a park, and he almost succeeded. He tried to lure him to his car, and fortunately, the boy did manage to escape, and he ran back to his family, who was at the park, by the way. And so the dad obviously was pissed off and he ran after Gordon, but Gordon escaped, unfortunately. So this actually shook up Gordon a lot. So he kind of didn't do anything for a while. So about 6 months after that, Gordon had left to go visit his parents in Los Angeles, and he did leave Sanford alone. He was so confident that Sanford wasn't going to leave because he was so afraid of him. Sanford said that when Gordon returned home, he was like in the best mood ever. He had this bucket with him and he told Sanford, hey, take a look in this bucket. Sanford was like, oh, what's in it? He's like, well, look at it. So when Sanford actually looked in the bucket, he did see a severed head of a boy. Now, according to Sanford, Gordon claimed that he killed this boy in self-defense, which we all know that's bullshit, but it is a possibility. But what are the odds? This guy's a fucking psycho. So he said that the boy attacked him first, and so he shot him, and so he decapitated him so they wouldn't identify his body. This is when Sanford realized what his uncle was actually capable of, which honestly just scared him far even worse than what he already was. So if he was already manipulated and traumatized, now it's like just 10 times worse at this point. Gordon had told Sanford to build a bonfire so they can go ahead and try to cremate the head, but it was not hot enough to cremate, so Gordon got an axe and just started smashing the head instead. He did keep the body in the car, and he later drove to a bridge where he threw the body over the bridge. And since in the 1920s, they didn't have anything like DNA testing or anything of that sort, so the body was eventually found, but the coroner couldn't really identify the boy. The only thing that he knew was that of possible Mexican descent. So the only thing they could really identify this boy as was the headless Mexican. So after all that, Gordon had taken Sanford to his parents' house in LA so that way they could have an alibi. Gordon did confess to his parents about the murder, and obviously his parents were upset. They were really pissed off at him. But the mom, when she heard Gordon's side of the story, she's like, well, you're defending yourself, so it's okay. She was such an enabler, like, fuck her, honestly. Like, she was just a piece of shit, just like her son. And honestly, like, in her eyes, Gordon couldn't do anything wrong. So really, she just pretty much helped them cover this up, which gave Gordon like a new level of confidence, and just went on to do worse things. So this is where we come to Walter Collins from the beginning of the story, or the movie Changeling, which basically that's what the movie is about. It really focuses on Christine and Walter Collins, a mother and son. So just a little backstory. So Christine was a single mother. Her husband, he was actually in prison for robbery, and he was sentenced to 40 years. So she was basically a single mother. She worked at a telephone company, and she did her best to provide for her son. One day, her son, Walter, wanted to go to the movies and asked her for some money to go. But unfortunately, that would be the last time that she saw him. After she realized that he wasn't coming home, she kind of freaked out. She was going around the neighborhood asking if anyone has seen her son. One neighbor did say that she saw him standing at the corner around 5 o'clock, but unfortunately, they never found him. The police were called. She made a missing persons report, which then they went on to try to find Walter Collins, and that's basically where the movie kind of picks up. They did find a boy who matched Walter's description in Illinois, and he did claim that he was in fact Walter. So he was brought home by Christine. Mind you, she had to pay to bring him home. They did not help her out for shit. So she paid to bring him home, and that's when she saw that, hey, this is not my kid. But LAPD was so adamant that it was. They just wanted to be the hero, because prior to Walter's disappearance, there was another little girl who went missing, which at the time there was no connection, and from my understanding there still isn't a connection to it, but everybody was freaking out. So they just wanted to be the hero pretty much. So they convinced her to take Walter and raise him as her own, if you will. After 3 weeks, she noticed like, hey, look, his behavior's different. He's not really him. Like, that's not my son. That's when they started really criticizing her, calling her a bad mother. They even arrested her because she was being difficult. And she called like, no, that is not my kid. So after a while, Walter actually confessed that he is in fact not Walter. His name was Arthur. He was a runaway from Illinois because he did not want to live with his dad and his stepmom because he could not get along with his stepmom. So he ended up saying, yeah, I'm him. He wanted to get the opportunity so he can get a free trip to Hollywood so he can hopefully meet his idol, his favorite actor, Tom Mix. Christine was released 10 days after Arthur's confession, and she did end up suing the LAPD, which she did win her case. However, they never paid. All they had to pay was $10,800, and they never paid her, which is bullshit. Unfortunately, Walter was never found. Then this brings us to the next two victims, which is the Winslow brothers. So the Winslow brothers lived in Pomona, and in 1928, Louis, the eldest, who was 12 at the time, and Nelson, who was 10, they wanted to go to the yacht club that their parents were members too. So they ended up going, but unfortunately they never came back home. Soon after, when the boys didn't come home, they called the police, and immediately they responded. They were searching high and low for them, but unfortunately they never were found. However, a few weeks later, the parents of the boys did receive a letter from the boys, which read, "Dear Mother and Dad, we are going to Mexico to make a lot of money making yachts and airplanes. A woman gave us something to eat. Don't worry, we will be okay." So they were actually really surprised because the boys never indicated that they wanted to run away or they wanted to go to Mexico. Nothing like that. So they were really, really shocked about that. So unfortunately, the parents never found the boys, and the police didn't make the connections between Walter's disappearance and the Winslow brothers' disappearance. However, in September of the same year, 1928, the police were notified that there was an illegal immigrant child working in a chicken farm in Wineville, California. So this is where we come back around to Gordon and Sanford and how they are all connected and whatnot. So Sanford's sister, Jessie, she noticed that there was something off about Sanford. Like this was years that he was there with his uncle Gordon. And she noticed that his writing did not improve. His vocabulary wasn't getting any better. And she just felt that something was wrong. So one day out of the blue, she showed up. Nobody expected that. So when she got there, Gordon, he made a complete 180. He was well behaved. He was being so polite. He would do all the cooking, the cleaning, tend to the farm, the chickens, and all that. Like, it even got to the point where Gordon gave Sanford his own room, his own bed. That way she would not have any suspicions of what's going on. She did try to talk to her brother, but he was so afraid of Gordon to say anything that he felt like if he would do what he did and do what he's doing to me, what would he do to my sister? So in order to protect her, he kept his mouth shut. He did not want Sanford saying anything to his sister. But one night he did actually leave them alone. And so Sanford was able to sneak out of the room and into where his sister was sleeping. And basically that's when he confessed everything. And Sanford did express to his sister that he was afraid that he was next. So that's why he couldn't leave. And he was just obviously very afraid. So the next day, Jessie, Sanford's sister, decided to go home. Once she got there, she was the one who made the anonymous phone call to the LAPD. So now, according to the book A Road Out of Hell, Sanford's book, the police were on their way, and from where the house stood, you can see anybody coming to the house. It wasn't like you were in a forest or something and it was just the element of surprise. No, you could see it. So when Gordon saw that, he told Sanford to stay back and that he was going to escape. So Gordon and his mother, Louise, managed to escape. So when the police got there, they were trying to question Sanford. He was quiet. He didn't say anything. He waited a good amount of time. So he knew that there's no way his uncle was going to be back at this time. After that, he actually confessed everything to them. He showed them where the bodies were. He showed them where he dug his little prison, the chicken coops where certain boys were held. He told them how it was done, how unfortunately he had to participate in certain events. And the police were just absolutely shocked because that's not what they were called for. Now, the police saw that Sanford was in very bad shape. So they took him to the hospital so he can get treated. And in the book, like I said, it does state what damages, and permanent damage, mind you, that he had. It was just so heartbreaking. I had to stop listening to it for a while because I just could not take it. It's that intense, in my opinion. That's why this story absolutely breaks my heart, because it really did happen, and it happened to a boy, you know, and not just one boy, but several other boys. And so after all that, once he got better, he showed the police where the graves were at, and they did find fragments of bones, fingers, hands, foot bones, toenails, particles of human flesh, and hair. They also stated that there was an odor of decay around. However, they did not find actual bodies. So because of this, the police were kind of questioning Sanford, like, is he even telling us the full story? Like, what's going on? But he told them, like, I know they're there because I buried them there under the orders of my uncle. And so when the police went and they did some more digging, you know, literally, they did find that some of the bone fragments had residue of quicklime. And if you don't know what quicklime is, don't worry, I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. So quicklime is a chemical compound that is also known as calcium oxide. It's normally used for steel making. It has believed that it could be used to accelerate corpse decomposition, but it really helps preserve the corpse, and it can get rid of the stench of decomposition. So basically, they found that somebody had put that there, but obviously it backfired. But it was made clear to the police that somebody had dug up the bodies and moved them elsewhere. Real quick, if you guys can hear my son playing, I apologize. He likes to play his video games and he can be a little loud sometimes. So if you hear him in the background, my bad. So they did find blood in the chicken coops. They did find an axe covered in blood in the chicken coops. So when they did some sort of testing on the blood samples that they found, like on the axe and the chicken coops, they discovered that it had two different types of DNA, which was chicken and human. They also discovered certain items of the victim, Walter and the Winslow boys, but because there was no bodies found there, they didn't have enough proof that the murders even took place there. But because they did find these missing items from these three victims, they were at least able to connect these victims to the location. However, the police did believe that there was a lot more victims that Sanford knew about. Gordon and his mother, they fled to Canada. They were actually found there. They were in fact arrested and they were expedited back to the US. While they were waiting to be expedited, they did confess to the murders of these boys. Louise, Gordon's mother, she actually confessed to killing Walter, and in the book it does really describe how she did it. And Gordon actually confessed to killing 5 boys in total. However, this was never proven, so we don't really know his victim count, unfortunately. And then once they got back to the US, they recanted their confession, and so they couldn't use that against them. So Gordon, he was the type of guy that he just felt so like he was smarter than you, that he knew better than you. He was so confident in himself that he decided to represent himself because he figured, I'm better than these lawyers, I'm more smarter than them, I can lie better, I'm gonna get away with this. So he also did make a motion to change his plea from not guilty to not guilty by reason by insanity. However, that was denied. Sanford in his book did say that he did have to give a testimony during the trial, which he knew that meant he had to be questioned by Gordon, which he did feel intimidated, but however, he knew that he was safe, so Gordon couldn't get to him. And Gordon thought, well, he's my nephew, he's afraid of me, so I'm going to manipulate this kid, which thankfully that did not happen. So Sanford made a full-on confession. He told him everything basically, and Gordon just sat there like questioning him, looking like a dumbass basically. So Gordon was found guilty to 3 of the 4 murders. His mother Louise was found guilty for Walter Collins' murder. He was given the max penalty, which is death by hanging. His mother Louise ended up going to trial. She reconfessed to Walter Collins' murder. Now, she was considered for the death penalty, but because she was a woman, they didn't want to give it to her, so they just basically gave her life in prison. However, she only served 14 years of her sentence, but she did pass away 2 years after she got out. But that's still bullshit because, like, dude, she was supposed to serve life and she didn't, so that's bullshit. So this is where we come to the aftermath, though this part you will see in the movie Changeling, which honestly I feel like it's almost spot on. It is very heartbreaking because Angelina Jolie just does such an amazing job playing Christine Collins, and you see the pain that she had to endure because her son went missing, and it was linked that he was with Gordon at the Wineville chicken coop farmhouse and whatnot. So, but they unfortunately never found any of the bodies, and my heart does go out to her. Unfortunately, she did already pass away, and so did the parents of the Winslow boys. So my heart goes out to both the parents and Christine and any other victims that were involved, which we do not know about. However, Gordon, he was such a sick individual. Like this kid, he was just wow. But while he was waiting his execution date, he actually wrote a letter to Kristen begging her practically to come and see him. And he told her in the letter, I'm going to tell you everything about Walter. And because she was so desperate to know what happened to her son, she really was hoping that he was still alive. When she got there, he didn't even make eye contact with her. He didn't say a word to her. And it freaking pisses me off because this is a mother who wants to know where her only, her son is, her only child. She wants to know what happened. She needs that closure. She needs that peace. She can't even bury her own son because she doesn't even know if he's really alive or dead because there was no body found, which was very conflicted for her. However, there was a charge made for his murder, so that kind of says it all right there. But it's just so sad that this sick individual wanted to play with her emotions and get like one last high, if you will, by saying, hey, I'm going to tell you what really happened to your son, and then just sit there and not even look at her. So the day of his execution, he actually requested a phonograph, which is basically like a record player, if you will, and he wanted to have the favorite song of his first victim, Philip, playing. I think in the movie, when they have the execution scene, I think they kind of had it pretty spot on, because the way it was described, it really did seem like it happened the way it did in the movie. So in a way, that kind of gives me satisfaction how he died being a little bitch. When he got taken up, or when he was about to be taken up into the thing, I don't even know what that's called, he asked the guard, like, will it hurt? And the guard just pretty much, I'm like, I don't know, but I'm really hoping it does, because that was the least. I feel that Gordon got it easy personally compared to what his victims got. And then Gordon actually requested to be blindfolded because he didn't want to see the news. He didn't want to see it coming, basically. But in my opinion, if I was there, I would have been like, nah, your ass could see it. You don't get that privilege because you didn't have that sympathy for your victims. They saw it all coming. And there's even a scene in the movie that honestly breaks my heart. This is why I have a hard time watching the movie. And spoiler alert, in the scene is where the boys are in the chicken coops and you see Gordon come and he's yelling at the kids and they're crying. Then he grabs one of the boys, takes him to the other side of the chicken coop, and it's pretty much blocked by like a wooden wall. However, you can still kind of see the shadow and you can hear everything that he's doing to this poor boy. Hey everyone, so I just wanted to come in here real quick to correct my last statement. So in the movie, you actually do see Gordon take a boy and put him in the other side of that wooden wall I was telling you. However, you do see Gordon attack the boy, but you don't see the boy himself. It is a very graphic scene if you guys want to continue to watch it, but I just wanted to come and correct that statement. I know it's just a movie, but it breaks my heart because that pretty much is what happened. There's a lot more details, obviously, in regards to what exactly happened to Walter Collins and the Winslow brothers and other victims, but mainly those three, because Sanford does talk about those three, and it's just so heartbreaking knowing that they suffered through that. And then seeing it in the movie, it just kind of like gives you a sense of the reality. And honestly, that I have such a hard time watching that because it's so heartbreaking. I have to, like, I cry. Honestly, I cannot watch that movie for that reason, but I did watch it and I do recommend it. So Gordon was hung on October 2nd, 1930. Now there's a speculation about what his actual last words are. Some people were stating that he was saying, don't hang me, or please don't make me walk so fast. He even asked people to pray for him, which is like, dude, shut the hell up, Now, fortunately, and I know a lot of people be like, oh my God, death is death. I get that, but this was a monster. He did not deserve any type of, like, he had no humanity for his victims, so I don't believe that he should get the same privilege, if you will. The noose was too loose for his neck to break, so he actually struggled for 13 minutes, which was not even close enough to what he deserved. He should have been struggling there forever, honestly, but he did eventually pass away. So Sanford, he actually did return home after all of that. From my understanding, he did not have a relationship with his mother because his mother, like, the whole family was just fucked, honestly, like poor Sanford and the sister. So he went home and he actually got married. He did enlist, so he fought in World War II. Now, Sanford and his wife, they wanted children, but Sanford did not want children of his own. So he went ahead and he adopted 2 boys because he was afraid that whatever his uncle had was like a family gene, if you will, and he didn't want to pass that. So they ended up adopting 2 boys. Now, obviously, when he went home and everything, people knew who he was. Not everybody, but people did know who he was. And of course, as you know, the newspapers, the media, all that stuff, they twist stories around a lot. So some people would think that he was like a monster, and some people knew that he was the actual victim. However, once his son was older, he took him out for a car ride, and he pretty much told him everything. He told him everything that had happened. He could understand why he had that kind of trauma. So his son actually was the one who asked Sanford if he can basically write down his story and write the book, A Road Out of Hell, which once again I will link down below. I do highly recommend it. Unfortunately, Sanford would not live to see the book being published because he did pass away in June 20th of 1991. He was 78 years old. Now, his son who wrote it, he believed that his father never did forgive himself for not really helping these boys, because he does go into detail in this book about why he did not help the boys. I think he actually almost did help one boy because he just felt really bad, but he believes that he never forgave himself for that. And then with the lack of evidence, honestly, there's really no way to tell how many actual victims they were, because it was also said that Gordon was also part of a human trafficking ring. There's no real evidence, and this happened almost 100 years ago. That, I mean, by now, if there was any evidence, it's pretty much gone. So in 1935, there was a boy and his parents that actually came forward claiming that 7 years prior to 1935, that this boy had actually gone missing and that he was actually one of Gordon's victims. However, according to Sanford, he said that he was basically the only one that escaped from that. And I believe this was the same boy that he actually came from Hesperia, California. And in the movie, at the end, you will see that it was alleged that Walter was supposedly spotted in Hesperia, California. However, there was no proof. There was nothing to back that up. And according to this young boy's claim, there was no evidence of that. And like I said before, Sanford did say he was the only one that escaped. So that pretty much concludes this video. And that is the true story of the movie Changeling, starring Angelina Jolie. If you have not watched it, I do highly recommend it. I will say one thing: the house itself is still standing. The chicken coops, they're not there anymore. I do have a video on this channel where I actually went to go visit the home, and I do kind of like give a quick summary about the story that happened. But if you guys do want some more details of it, I do have my podcast channel, Venom for the Soul, where I do go over pretty much all the details in regards to all the victims, the background of Gordon and Sanford and whatnot. So if you guys want to check that out, I hope you guys do. I will definitely link that as well. So let me know what you guys think, and let me know if there's any true story crime movies you guys want me to cover here, any paranormal stories you guys want me to cover as well. Comment down below. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys liked it. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.